So now that we have done our first week here, I have some tips that I hope will be helpful moving forward with your revisions on your papers and also with the class as a whole. So one of the first things is going to be eliminating our use of first person. So in general, in professional writing and academic writing, the first person is never allowed. So that means no I, we, me, you, us, and the like. Those kinds of things are just, generally considered not professional, and we want to work to eliminate them over time. Also, they're kind of obvious. If you're sending the email, if you're preparing the document, if you're writing the essay, clearly it's your opinion, so there's no need to state that. And in fact, when we say things like I think and I believe, it actually takes away some of our authorial power, as opposed to just coming out and saying that very strongly. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you revise these papers is go back and pull out every single usage of first person plus the you and also implied you, and that is one thing that's really going to strengthen our writing. So part 2 is conjunctions cannot be used to begin a sentence. So when we talk about conjunctions, those are words that are used to connect phrases and clauses. You can remember them because it's the acronym FANBOYS: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. We're going to want to make sure that those are only used in the middle of sentences and with a comma before them, not to start a sentence out. Also, we need to work on our topic sentences. In general, our topic sentences either did not tie back to our thesis or did not serve their purpose. The purpose of a topic sentence is to serve as kind of an umbrella over the entire paragraph. So we're going to want to make sure that it's focused on what's in that paragraph, but also we're going to want to make sure that it ties back to our thesis. For example, one of your classmates wrote about how fracking should not be allowed. And so, for example, the paragraph about that talks about the main reason why fracking should not be allowed, a good topic sentence for that would say, the main reason why fracking should not be allowed is that it is extremely dangerous. And then that paragraph would go on to tell all of the different ways that fracking is extremely dangerous. But you can see that it tells what's in the paragraph, but also ties it back to the thesis by saying that fracking should not be allowed. Next, we're going to want to IC all quotes. IC is an acronym which stands for Introduce, State, Explain, and Analyze. When we do that, it's going to help our quotes flow better within the body of our paper, and it's also going to limit our use of quotes. In a paper like this, I would expect 1 to 3 direct quotes. And for every single quote you use, you have 3 sentences that accompany it. So if you want to use a direct quotation, the first thing you will do is introduce it with a sentence, then you'll state it, that's the part in quotation marks. You'll explain what this stated part means, and then you will analyze it or synthesize it into the rest of your work of literature of the paper. So anytime you have a direct quote, you should have 3 sentences surrounding it if you're doing it appropriately. And if you don't want to use a direct quote, there are other ways like summary citations and things like that we'll move into near the end of the class, and other ways to do that. But if you use quotation marks ever in your paper, there should be at least 3 sentences around it. The next thing that we're going to remember is we're really going to want to back up our information with research and literature, so don't just rant. A lot of these papers read like journal entries, which they're not. They're formal academic papers. So we're going to want to make sure that we have at least 3 credible sources. If you have 3 on the head for a paper this short, that's just fine. You're just going to want to make sure that we are not just rambling and we're not just coming from like our passions, or not just like throwing stuff down, on the paper. As we work through these drafts of this, and it's really going to help you when we get toward the end, we're really going to want to make sure that we have 3 credible sources and then correctly cited for our opinions. So review APA style. I would say the OWL at Purdue, that's the online writing lab, is probably your best resource. I know Cornerstone uses Nightsight a lot, but I think that the OWL and Citation Machine are probably better tools, or easier tools at least. Those are 2 that I use within my doctoral program. I've always liked OWL because it can answer basically any question you have, and you can do anything as simple as Google, how do you cite a blank in an APA paper, and the OWL tool will come up and tell you one of the first links and resources because it's so well known, and I think that can be really helpful as well. So be sure there wasn't actually anybody that did APA completely right from title page to reference page and internal citation in between, so just be sure that you brush up on that moving forward so that throughout the rest of your program at Cornerstone, those kinds of things are on point. And then work toward a more substantive conclusion and body paragraphs. So we don't just want our conclusion to be something that, is just the end of our paper and we just throw it on because we have to and it's a part of this formula. You really want your conclusion to be something the reader is going to think about for a while, right? Your conclusion is the last opportunity that you have to talk to the reader and to get them to think about what you are doing. So in there, you do want to, recap the main points of your paper, but you want to bring it home. So talk about the implications, right? If we continue to allow fracking, what kind of future is that going to make for our progeny? Those kinds of things. Really give the reader one last thing to remember, to hang on to, and to keep them thinking about. When we talk about length of paragraphs, some of us were in that 3 to 5 sentence range. 3 to 5 sentences is okay for an introduction, maybe. Your conclusion you want to get probably out to 5 to 7, and your body paragraphs you really want 10 to 14 sentences, especially at the college level. So really work on adding to your body paragraphs. Really, the thing that's going to add length is adding those facts, statistics, and then also really just discussing those points. Okay, don't just say like one sentence about a thing. Talk about that with the reader over 3 or 4 or 5 sentences per example. In general, when you write a 5-paragraph essay like this, you want each body paragraph to contain 3 points, and each of those 3 points or pieces of evidence to have 3 illustrating examples. So you can see how you could get out to 10 to 15 sentences per paragraph super easy just by doing that. So really work on elaborating so that when the reader's done reading your paper, they have the full information to move on to, the next step, whatever your paper is being used for. So this class was rewritten recently, and the 5-paragraph essay is actually a new element. I have mixed feelings about it. The cons are it has no real-world applications. It's even phased out at the high school level, actually. Where I teach at the high school level, we don't 5-paragraph essay anymore because it, stifles student creativity and encourages the formula over maybe the process and the ideology and things like that. But it does have some useful applications, especially to non-writers. And by non-writers, I mean people who aren't passionate about writing or for whom writing is not their strongest of the disciplines. Because it does teach structure. It does have a pretty clear, path from top to bottom. It has a pretty clear and logical pattern of thought. It can teach you to think in those ways. It can teach you to outline effectively. So I do, understand why it's included, but there are a few things that probably you need to know moving forward. So from this specific assignment, the format that is offered in this course is not a traditional format of a 5-paragraph essay. So ideally, a 5-paragraph essay is used as a persuasive essay, and within that, all 3 body paragraphs would argue your point only. Or the alternative is that the first 2 body paragraphs argue your point, and the third one serves as the counter argument or the rebuttal. And that's a little bit different than this, so just understand that the way it's presented in this course is pretty non-traditional. And then also the way it's presented in this course requires your paragraph 4 to be pretty important. So this is an important note when you go to rewrite these papers. So your paragraph 4 becomes absolutely crucial because otherwise you don't have a very logical or compelling argument for your side, right? You have everything that's good and everything that's bad, and then you're going to address a couple of the things that are bad. So really it's kind of like flip-flop or here or there, when really you want to convince us that you have a strong thesis and your thesis is backed in research and reality, and you're right on this topic. So when we get to paragraph 4, what you're going to do for that is you're going to look back at your paragraph 3 and all of the reasons that people on the opposite side of your viewpoint are there, and you are going to, in paragraph 4, dissect those, take them apart piece by piece, and tell why each example is wrong or faulty in its logic and why you are correct. If you don't do that, the rebuttal portion of your paper is going to be pretty weak, and that takes away from your thesis. If you have questions then about, so then what does the topic sentence of that look like? It becomes something like the benefits of fracking do not outweigh the costs. Or fracking should not be allowed because the benefits simply do not outweigh the costs. Something like that would allow it to tie back into the thesis and would also be a pretty clear statement of what's going to come beneath that. So what's next when we move forward to revise this? I would like you to revise your paper according to the writing that I put on it and also the comments in this presentation. So what happened was, as I discovered that people had the same kinds of problems, I stopped writing it on their papers. So it's likely that you have all of the comments on your paper plus 1 or more things mentioned in this presentation. So just make sure that when you revise, you are taking both things into consideration. And then please email me that back within a week with essay revision in the subject line. I have the 1-week timeline because from trial and error. Before, I had no requirement of when to turn it back in, and people would wait until the very end, and it resulted in more work for them and more grading for me. And also, it only allowed them to revise at one time, whereas the sooner you turn it in, you can have more revisions. You've probably noticed by your grade in the gradebook that the PGS grade scale is not the same as the undergrad one, and the point system is off so that you have to work harder and get a higher score to get a higher grade. So this will allow you to revise revise it as many times as you want to. Remember, I will regrade it, I'll provide new feedback, and the higher grade prevails. So as many times as you want to do this, I will keep on grading it. And then just lastly, when we're going over this, when you write, really try and be persuasive and use logic and proof. Really try to stay away from using your own passionate feelings on the topic. I think a lot of us chose things that we believed in pretty strongly, and that can lead to us saying some pretty, strong things being worded really strongly that maybe aren't, grounded in, research necessarily. So just really be careful that you're not committing a logical fallacy in your writing because you're, so passionate about your topic. And that's not just for this assignment, that's for this entire course. It is professional writing. And one of the biggest things in professional writing is that it is objective. Whether you're writing that email, that memo, most of the time you really want just the facts and the logic to speak for themselves, and you want your emotion to be removed from it. So practicing it here in Unit 1 is actually going to help us move forward and hopefully give you a takeaway also that will help you in your professional lives after this. So as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and I look forward to seeing everybody's second drafts of this next week. Have a great weekend.